So here we have an astrology chart. And for those people not familiar with astrology, let me just give you a really basic summary. Astrology is basically a snapshot of the sky at a particular point in time. And here you've got the eastern horizon, and so when it's sunrise, the sun is coming up and it kind of rolls around throughout the day until it reaches the highest point in the sky, and then it eventually dips below the western horizon at sunset. The sections of the sky that the sun passes through are called houses, and those are areas of life. And over the course of the year, the sun is actually against a different background in our universe here, as seen with respect to Earth. And that background is the signs that you're used to. So there's Aquarius, there's Pisces, and so on. In astrology, the houses as areas of life tell you about different things. And so 1 is your projection, 12 is your general mood, 10 is your reputation, 9 is learning and far journeys and such. The planets, on the other hand, are basically solid forms of behavior where the signs give the character of that same behavior. So here, for example, you have Aquarius. Aquarius is associated with mass information, lots of data and technology and all of that. And if you had to take mass information and crystallize it into a particular form, you get a planet. And that planet, in this case, is Uranus. There's Uranus right there. And that's basically the solid form of data and information, friendship groups, and all of that. Okay, so now the difference between my work... so before I tell you the difference, let me just give you an idea of how we read personalities from this. You can read a person's personality by basically putting all that stuff together. And so if you know the 9th house is about journeys or learning, higher learning, and you know the sun is about ego, it is, and you know that Aquarius is about data and information, then you could say that this chart, which is the chart of my first book, Full Spectrum Astrology, the book would have an ego which has the character of data and information, the way it projects itself to the reader, not in words, but just as an invention, is through the character of data and information in the realm of higher learning. And if you go around the wheel, you can get all kinds of personality traits that come from that. Additionally, you have these lines here. Now what these lines represent are basically the angles of separation between the planets. And so, for example, you've got the sun, which is your one-on-one ego projection, and Mars, which is your steering others, your attempt to influence others. And they appear to be separated along this blue line right here, and that's a square. And that means, that means something. I'm not going to get into it because I don't have much time. It's basically emotional projection. How a book has emotions, that's a whole other topic. But anyway, so that means that when the book is displaying its intent, it attempts to explain with enthusiasm, because that's what the combination of Sun and Mars gives you, and that's based on research. Now, speaking of the research, I want to outline the difference between what I write about in FSA, Full Spectrum Astrology, and its second book, HBS, Hayden's Book of Synastry. In traditional astrology, you only have about 6 to 10 different kinds of lines. There's a trine that's 120 degrees. 1/3 of a circle means that it has the character of the 3rd sign, which is Gemini. 1/4 of a circle, I told you wanting things and intent, has the character of the 4th sign, which is Cancer, which likes to want things and take care of people. Now, that's nice, but if you try to read all of the possible combinations, you run into some trouble. So first of all, this astral wheel, which you may have seen before, gets a little bit crowded when you're trying to basically interpret everything. If we had to draw an angle of separation between every 2 things in here, then it would just look like a big mess. And so usually you only see the main ones. But if you want to see them all, then you actually go into table view. And this is what table view looks like. This is all of the angles that you'll typically see. 1/3 of a circle, 1/6 of a circle right next to each other, and there you go. Now the problem in traditional astrology is that, well, actually there are several problems, and I talk about a lot of them in the books. But what if you wanted to interpret something like this one? The combination of your moon and your Mercury. Now first of all, we don't know what the combination of moon and Mercury does in general. And even if we did know, we don't know what your angle is. See, there's nothing there. And the reason there's nothing there is because that's not one of the main angles. So in my research, I basically did statistics. I didn't rely on the normal astrology, which we all learn, and instead I produced a table like this. Now, in this one, you can see at least what fraction of a circle separates these two. This here is a 2 conjunct. It's 1/13 of a circle. And in HBS and FSA, I did the research on what 1/13 of a circle meant. Also, I did the research on what the planets together meant. So there are full interpretations, not just for all of these angles, all of them here with no holes, but there are also full interpretations for every combination of planets that you can get. And so if you look in HBS or FSA, you'll see what the combination of Uranus and, say, Selene does. It actually gives you a kind of talent for information. Last thing I want to show you is how the research was done, because when you first encounter astrology, you feel, oh, that's pseudoscience, that's hogwash. But there are actual statistical patterns. Now, I don't have a lot of time in this recording, so what I'll basically tell you is that I looked up the names of people. These are only the famous people. I've hidden the names of the private set. But there were lots and lots of charts that I went through, about 800 charts. And I lined up all of these combinations, instead of them being arranged in a triangle here, they're all arranged in a row. So if this is one person's chart, his table view, then I took all of that stuff you just saw and arranged it in a single row. So for example, Leonardo da Vinci, this is his separations going all the way across every combination of planets. And what I did was sort these things. And I sorted these combinations, basically saying, okay, what personality trait unifies everybody whose planet up here is separated by 1/13 of a circle? What personality trait unifies all the 1/14 of a circle? And then I did the interpretations, and I came to a conclusion about what this particular column is telling me in each person's personality. In full spectrum astrology, I knew what these columns were, but in Hayden's Book of Synastry, I used a more scientific method. It was called the blind method in the book, and that's where I did the interpretations, and I did not know what these columns were. So I actually wrote most of the interpretations in the second book without knowing what planets I was describing, and there are definite statistics there. The reason you should care about this is because when you actually try to test astrology, you see that there truly are patterns that come with cluster analysis, and this is, well, it's a whole other statistical story, but it's actually not just folklore. And because the patterns were so strong, I have some hypotheses about how that works. It's explained in the book. It's a very, very long story. It's actually kind of complicated, but there is a science to this, and you can read more about that in the book. The important thing about this, though, is that finally we can take your astrology chart and give you a complete and full and accurate interpretation of things.